This is something that I have been working on for a while, and I've been promising something special, so I thought I would bring this in. Some of you may know that I do some channeling, limited. I have certain spirits that do come around me more often than others, like Matilde, which I talked about before. She's around often. She likes my family, so she comes around a lot. But there are other ones that come in and out. Generally, like I can sort of pull them forward by recognizing their name or their spirit or whatever and pull them forward. But there's some that just show up. And this is one in particular who just showed up one night. This is my background. I'm going to give you a little background on the situation. I am a history buff. I've always been a history buff. I was raised with a father who loved to take us to historical places. My mother did too. You know, we'd go, and I think I saw every battlefield in Pennsylvania that there was. Maybe not everyone, but a lot of them. So Civil War, Revolutionary War, just history in general, and definitely. Okay, so he's coming in now. Definitely one of the things that has attracted me was I have this love of history of pirates, and it could be from growing up in Maine. I'm not sure where it came from, other than my family is the name Morgan runs through the family. That being said, I don't know much about Morgan. I do know quite a bit about a shipwreck that was found off of the coast of Massachusetts. And I believe it was in the I want to say it was, I just heard something, 1780s. I may be wrong on that one. I've got too many things going on in the head here at the moment. And that was the Widow. And for those of you that are familiar with the Widow, there was a whole, there are books on it. There's a museum on Cape Cod about it. And so I've done a lot of research on that. But I have never been down on the coast of North Carolina or Virginia until a couple of years ago. When my husband and I traveled to Williamsburg, and then we went down to Virginia Beach and that area. That sort of, there were other things I brought home from Virginia, the other spirits that I brought home from Virginia, including one that has this very specific smell that followed me most of the way home. So anyway, so we'll get back to this reading. This reading is going to be my attempt to channel Blackbeard. Now, there are a lot of names that have been attributed to him over the years. Edward Teach is one of them. He does not necessarily tell me that that's his name. He says he goes by Blackbeard. He said he comes across, okay, all right, I'm getting there. He's well, let's start with this. He's very smart. Very smart. Like, super smart. And he was sort of, yeah. He was ahead of his time. And he and I have had talks before, but we're going to try and see if we can get a few things on camera that do a channeling session with him. If you see I've got the cards, mostly I do that just so I can focus. I don't really use them to do the reading. It's going to be what I hear, I'll relate. Believe it or not, that's up to you. That's your choice. Like I said, I have a few spirits that come across really strongly. Some of them are not nice. Some of them are nice. He's nice to me. um, he's definitely someone who has embraced his history. He has embraced this sort of image, because I think in his life he was a bit of a showman. um, a bon vivant. He knew how to use. He has this sort of magnetic personality, and I seriously feel like that is what transcends his energy today. All right, so let's get into asking him some questions, because I really want to. The bottom of the deck is contemplation, which definitely, fits with this. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I'll tell you what he gives me for an answer. And hopefully out of all of this, we'll have a video, because all right, let's start with, he's like right here. Also be known, I poured him a little bit of whiskey, so that's probably why he's standing there. Not whiskey, rum, sorry. Okay, early years. Now, you've told me that Edward Teach was not your real name, but that's the name you went by, correct? Ooh, no. He said he had many names, which is understandable. They all had many names. He said, okay, so let's go back to how you came into this life, all right? How you became a pirate in this lifetime. He says, in that lifetime, in many lifetimes, but in different forms. Okay, all right. So you have reincarnated. Let's just ask that question. He says part of him has, if you believe, this is me. I believe in reincarnation. He says part of him is still there. And he says, but he has reincarnated several times and finds himself enjoying it. He says he has incorporated, I see a businessman, and I see a somewhat powerful one. He said he likes to learn. Okay, all right, and experience. Okay. So how old were you? I know I've asked this before. There's some question. How old were you when you went to, when you signed on? You signed on with the Navy, with the British Navy. How old were you? Because there's some question about that. And he shows me at the docks, and he shows me to be about, it's hard to tell because they look so much younger then. He said he had grown a bit, and so he was taller than a lot of them. He said that he passed himself off as being older than what he was. He said he was around 17, 15, no, No, he says 15. He passed himself as 17. He was 15. And he said he was tall than most of the people. But he said that, okay, so let's ask about family. And I can feel him right here. Family. Did your family, what was your family life like? He's showing me his mother, who was, he said he had a normal childhood. He said normal for that time. He said there was always this sort of, he said his father was a businessman, whether he was a merchant or he was in some sort of business. And he wasn't upper class, he was middle class. And he had made that money for himself, really in alliance with the government. Something about an alliance with the government. He had made this money. And he's saying that he was a second son. He's told me this before. He was a second son. He was not keen to go into the business. And he often would, he liked to hang out near he said when they would go into Bristol, he would hang out by the ships. He liked the ships. And like he says at one time he was almost kidnapped. Press ganged. Okay. And he says he keeps showing me he has like, you gotta slow down. You're getting ahead of me. Yes, I know that I'm not keeping up. Okay. So take, he's already going there before I ask a question. He decided to join the Navy, but he didn't tell his father until he'd done it. Oops. And his father wanted to, is that a thing? That's a thing. That's a thing. His father wanted to buy him, he said if he waited, that he would buy him some sort of a spot or something. But he didn't want to wait. And he shows me learning things. Like he shows me as a schoolboy sitting there. He's petting my cat. He shows me as a schoolboy sitting at a desk, not a desk, a table. And like he knew, says he knew it all. He knew it instinctively. He had an ability to apply it. Because he watched things. He applied things really well. So he was very good at that. All right. So he had a sister. He's saying he has a younger sister. Mother, father, who was not there a lot, but he was so focused on making money, making status, and I've asked him this, I asked him this earlier, I'm going to ask again, what part of England around Bristol were you from? Because I don't get that he lived directly in Bristol. I get that he lived... Where did you live? It's not giving it to me. This is him starting the adventure, the energy of the adventure. Okay, all right, so we'll move on to that. So you joined the Queen's Navy. And yes, you lied to get in there. And he was on another ship, but then he got assigned. Oh, my stomach. He said at first he had a hard time adjusting to it. And then okay, so Hornigold. Let's go to Hornigold. Benjamin Hornigold. Benjamin Hornigold knew he was young, but he recognized in him, he kept saying it was something of himself. He would often say that it was something of himself that he saw in Blackbeard. And he see, Hornigold liked money. And Blackbeard, yeah. So Blackbeard saw in him a lot of what he had seen in his father. It was the same thing. His father would tell him he saw him in himself. But he wasn't that person. And so he... Hornigold. He said he was a really harsh taskmaster, and he could be really, really cruel when he wanted to be. And Blackbeard didn't like that. He thought that there were other ways to deal with people. And he said he would often get in trouble when he was first on the ship, but then when Hornigold took him under his wing, he would eventually he gave him more power as he went on. And he shows me Hornigold standing over him, and he's working on books of things. Like it's the same thing when he was in the classroom that his father wanted him to do. This is Hornigold. This is the next layer of it. Hornigold was the next power in his life. But the lessons were a lot... Hornigold was a collector, he said. Hornigold was a collector who liked to collect power. And he knew he was really smart, and he knew how to look like he was staying on the right side of things. He was older, much older. And he said that what about Hornigold? He feels like, so Hornigold took the pardon. They were supposed to be legal, but they were given privateer. They became privateers. Okay, so for those who don't know piracy, he says privateers is just a fancy government word for it. And he says that they were given this need to cause havoc. They were given the right to cause havoc. Yeah. And he said that legally, but not. What does that mean? Legally, but not. So they were told to do bad things, but, it was like if they got caught, they were not going to be. So when he says it was no different than most of the others that were out there at that time. Okay, so let's see here. My eyes hurt. So Hornigold. There was like this, it was a bombshell when Hornigold took the pardon, because his men were like, no, let's go do this. Let's go. And he said no. And they were mad. And and he said Hornigold was not in good health at that point. He was older. He just wanted to go home. He was weary. He said that he convinced Hornigold to give him the command of the ship. And he said to him, this was he knew what he was doing, but he wanted the power. He said it was almost like he had to prove. He had already had a ship at this point. He had a smaller ship that Hornigold had given him that had been captured. But the men got behind. It was like okay, all right. So what he is saying is he was sort of keeping a level ground when Hornigold said he was retiring, that he was taking the pardon. The men wanted to go back out and do it all, including capture English ships. And they sort of like, you're the leader, you take this, you command this. And he went, okay. Because part of him felt like proud, like he had accomplished something that he was no longer second in command. He was first in command. So can you give me some, chills? Yeah, give me chills. Okay, so go on and tell me about, he says from there they went south. He says they didn't like winters. They didn't like winters. He describes the city in Bristol as being very dirty and smelly. And he said, yes, the ship smelled too, but he preferred to be on the ocean or in warmer areas. Okay, so let's move on here a little bit. Let's go down to the Caribbean. He says he didn't go directly to the Caribbean. He said they went west first and then sailed down the coast. And he says he did go to his Boston, he says your Boston, meaning my Boston, um, several times, but it was too cold, and he had been above that, he says, but he said there was not the treasure to be found that as there was down south, and it was cold there, so they went south. So they went to, he shows me sailing down the coast, and he shows me like being in the open, and he says he's older now. He's in his, I'd say, I want to say mid-20s, maybe, or late 20s. And he's gotten the beard. Like he had it before. As he goes on, he's like showing this transition. And as he transitions, the personality becomes bigger and more. And he sort of takes on this persona. He said, like the name Edward Teach, they took it on and he used it to his advantage to become scarier than what he was. He's saying he was scary. He's saying he was. He hold no quarter, brook no quarter. Yeah, but he says, like, he's showing me down in I want to say the Virginia area. Is that right? Virginia. And up above that, he had captured a ship, and he had taken on a man who came to him willingly. He had been on another ship and he came to him willingly. And he took him on in the role that Hornigold had given him. Now, this black man was black. This man had been a slave that had been captured. But he says he didn't see color. And he didn't see... He said it was... nationality was more important at that point than color of skin. And so, allegiances. And he took this man on because he trusted him more than he trusted most, which is not completely, but some. And he taught him the same. He said he taught him how to read and write and keep. I see him specifically keeping money, like this man is moving money from one point to another. But that's not to say that he had free reign, because Blackbeard says that he watched him all the time. He was always very aware, even though he was very sort of like, he came across as very remote, but he knew what was going on within his ships. He had more than one? Ships. He had more than one. It didn't make him happy. He says, okay. Would I just drop a card? Probably. Yeah, I dropped a card. So, one of the stories that I'm told about you is that, normally I would relate this in my mind, but I'm going to do it for you guys. So, one of the stories is that you had multiple wives up and down the coast. Is this the truth? Yes, I've asked you about this before. And it's boring. And he says that He didn't stay in the same spot very long. He liked women a lot. Mostly in winter, he said he would stay until the storms were over. And then he would leave. And tell me again what you said about marrying them. He said if they believed that he was going to marry them, he told them in the beginning that he didn't marry. He said, but some of them got it into their heads that he was going to marry them. And he liked to treat them well. Because he said being with them was a risk to them. He knew he was going to go and they were going to stay. And so he always treated them very well. And he says in many ways, it was a reflection of the women he'd had in his life when he was growing up. So I'll ask about the incident with the two brothers, and I think this was down in Virginia. I've seen, he says that he's seen the video, and there's a video out there of the two brothers, and he says it's like I can't tell you who did the video. It was like for a documentary of some sort. And I watched it, and I think this is where he came into me the strongest was, and it shows the brothers showing up and Blackbeard sitting at a table, and they catch him with his back to the door. And he's, first of all, he would never have been with his back to the door. And they pull swords on him. And in the video, he is sitting there, he pulls out his gun and he shoots them. And he says, first of all, he said they would never have gotten that far unless he let them. And he said, they were mad because of the stories that, he says there was not three brothers. And he says he didn't kill him. He says that they needed to understand that he had not, I think a thing's making noises in here, that he had not made promises. He says he never made those promises, that she understood it differently. And it was a matter of, it was like what he had said before was that he enjoyed their company, but by being with them, he put them, because he left. He always left, and they would be left behind. So he had to make the brothers understand. He thinks that whole scene, if you get a chance to see this scene, and I can't even tell you what it was in. It was some documentary that I found on YouTube. And it was talking, there's a scene where he looks up and he's looking in a mirror and he can see them behind them. And he said, it did not happen that way. He said, first of all, he said there were men outside. His men were outside the door. He was never in danger. He said, but he had to prove that he he had to he didn't, well, no, he said he didn't have to convince him. He didn't care. But he let them know that there was no such promise and there was no marriage. He said, though he did have one woman in particular. Is it that one? He said the longer he stayed with them, the more the expectation, and he really couldn't. He knew that his life was on the ocean. He wants to, okay, all right. You want to jump to that already? All right. So I wanted to go to the Caribbean. He wants to go to, he's showing me the governor of a state. I want to say it's Virginia. And him being accepted and like he's a guest, and he is, it's sort of like the man is saying, see who I have here. This is a famous person. You know, you should be in awe of me. And he feels like, he says he took that friendship much in the same way that Hornigold took his relationship with the crown, in as a way of protecting himself. Because he said not everyone in that area liked him, which is, I have actually read that. So that's, and he says that that relationship was his downfall. Okay. All right. So we're going to go over to, we'll go to the time when the ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, which was the ship that he took and renamed the Queen Anne's Revenge, when it became, this is the most controversial. He's like, he doesn't really want to talk about it. So we're going to talk about it because this is probably the most controversial part. He says they found the ship. He said they know where the ship is, which is true. The ship was found, I think, in the 90s. He said, of course, they didn't find it all. I want to know, did you purposely run it aground? Okay. No. He's mad at me. You knew I had to ask that. Now you don't want to talk to me. We can finish this off quickly. He says, I already told you. He says, and he and I have had this sort of mini discussion in my head before about what happened. Because he says it's not as the men who served on him. He he has a lot of names for the ones that are, and I don't understand them, but He has this very strong, sometimes it comes in words, sometimes it comes as images, sometimes it comes in very strong emotions. And in this case, it's coming across as a very strong emotion. He says they used his name to save their own necks, but it didn't work. He says that running around was never the plan. But when it happened, the men were so in arms when they realized they couldn't get it back off the sand. He said there've been storms. It was always treacherous there. They wanted to put someone else in command, and he wouldn't let them. He would not hear of it. And he knew at this point, he had done it enough, so he was getting weary. He didn't like having that many people questioning. Definitely didn't like when they questioned him. So he and I want to say there's like 3 or 4 others. They're not that many. He said there was under 12. Decided to move stuff off the ship. They didn't move everything off the ship. Says he left some for them. Because he knew what the fate was if they got caught out there. Did he purposely leave them? He said oh. He made the decision he made. So he's giving me the impression that there was no other choice, but I don't know how that stands. So their fate was his own. He said he just had a different time. And he was able, it feels to me like he says, you make me out a scoundrel. Well, you're not exactly a hero. Yeah, it's getting harder to read him. He's peeved at me. This is not the era of his life that he wants to talk about. He liked talking about his younger part, but he doesn't like talking about this. He says what he would have done, any of the others out there doing it would have done the same thing. And he said those men that were left on the ship, he said, would not have gone with him. They wouldn't go with him. They wanted to stay with the ship, get it off the reef, but they couldn't. And so in the end, they turned it to try and save themselves. All right. He's pissed. So he's pulling off. All right. So this has been a really long reading, and I'm really tired now. It's going to take a while to get back out of this one. All right. I hope you enjoyed it. You know, if he decides to come back and continue the discussion, we'll do it more later. But for right now, he's had enough. He's like, and something in French, which I don't understand, but yeah, he's gone. Okay. All right. So there we go. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. I did not come out the way I expected it to. Like I said, he comes and goes a lot, so you may hear from him again. But he is definitely, he has come and gone. This is what he wanted, right? He wanted this reading. So okay. All right. So that's it for the reading for today. I'm going to go get some coffee or something and get myself motivated. So hope you all enjoyed. If you did, hit the like and subscribe button. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. And yeah, if you want to see more of these. All right. Bye-bye.